All right, come on in, everyone. Come on in. Good to see everybody. I'm scrolling the names of everyone. I know so many of you all. This is so awesome. See, and Kate and I were just talking. We haven't done a webinar in a long time, so this is a blast from the past. Thank you, Monica, for starting the chat. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's get that chat warmed up. You guys know if you've been on webinars with me, I love to keep the chat active. Drop your, wherever you're joining from. Let us know what state you're in. I know Monica has a great following all over, I was gonna say all over the US, but really all over the world. We'd love to know. Oh, there we go. Let's see some people doing it. Louisiana, Pennsylvania. Look at you guys. This is awesome. Love to see this. Yeah, keep it going. If you're just now getting in the room, take your time. We're gonna get settled in and get started here in just hello from Italy. I hear you, Maria. We're warming up the chat a little bit. So if you want to drop your location in, drop your state in, let us know where you're joining from. We'll be using the chat a little bit today. There's Kelly. Hey, Kelly. So it is about 2 minutes after, according to my clock. So Kate, why don't you get us started with a little bit of housekeeping, then I'll do a little introduction with Monica whenever you're finished.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I'm Kate. I'm from Trafera. I'm just going to be here as kind of your moderator and housekeeping gal. So the first couple of things, if you saw some of the invitations that were out on social media or email, you saw that you are now all eligible to get $5 Starbucks gift cards. All we need from you is for you to complete the exit survey at the end of this session and to have registered with a school EDU work email address. If you, for whatever reason, it kind of auto-filled in your registration, you put your Gmail in, you can just send me your email address at the end. I have my email linked kind of in the Q&A thing, so you can send that to me. Other things, if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat. I'm going to be watching that throughout the session. I'll be getting them to Monica or Josh kind of throughout the presentation. And if we kind of can't get to them during that, we'll get to them at the end during Q&A. But we have 45 minutes kind of sectioned up for this presentation, and I'm just going to send it back over to Josh to let her rip.
Awesome. Thank you. And so thank you all for being here. And we're going to get started with Monica. Just before she starts, I just want to say how much I am enjoying this idea of teaching with Chrome. I know in a lot of districts, we see deployments where students have Chromebooks and sometimes adults have something else. And I remember the days when, we're teaching from textbooks most of the time, and you would have like the teacher textbook would have one page number and the students would be on another. And there was always this confusion and lack of clarity that came with that. And I feel like now the 21st century version of that problem is when educators are on one operating system and students are on another, and that can just be a nightmare for clarity and for presentation, for demonstration, because sometimes the buttons aren't in the right places, and so they can create a little bit of a mismatch. And so over the last, I don't know, 3 weeks or so, I've been taking a test drive with a new Chromebook that's part of a promotional thing that we're doing, and if we get time we'll talk about that at the end. But I've been test driving this Chromebook, and I got to say I'm so impressed with how functional it is and how fast and efficient it is and how capable it is to do all the things that I need to do from a teaching perspective. And so it's been a lot of fun. And I know, Monica, we were probably going to talk about some of that stuff and probably other things too. So if you're ready, Monica, I'd love for you to jump in and kind of lead us through this discussion. If it makes sense to you, I'll just kind of chime in where it feels natural.
You bet. That sounds great. And I am just so excited to be here with you all today for this conversation on teaching with Chrome. And as you heard Josh say, we're going to talk today about using Chromebooks as a tool for teaching. As you're working off of that device, thinking about the things that make it special as a workflow for you in a classroom or in classrooms that you might support in the role that you're currently in, and really thinking about how you can refine your workflow as you're mirroring a student experience, boost creativity, not only in the way that you share information and what teaching and learning looks like in your environment, but also what students are able to do in a creative way. And we'll share some strategies for managing a classroom. And as you heard already, we have time carved out specifically for Q&A, but it doesn't mean you have to hold your questions until the very end or until you see a Q&A slide. Feel free to jump into the chat with any questions that you have as we are unpacking this topic of teaching with Chrome today. And so I thought it might be a good place for us to start to talk a little bit about the teaching and learning upgrade. And this might already be a spot, Josh, where you want to jump in as I'm sharing some of the things that are standout features for me, because some of you, especially if you follow along with my Easy Ed Tech podcast, might have heard the conversation that we had, I want to say earlier this year. So right around that end of
I think
May,
so.
early June time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where we talked about Google Workspace Administrator and teacher tips. So I know I have a few to share that go along with making the most of Google Workspace and the teaching and learning upgrades. But are there any that are front of mind for you as we get ready to jump in?
I mean, I'm a sucker for practice sets, and yeah, well, and originality reports, which I'm finding more uses for those. Actually, but the last time we talked, practice sets were just announced, and so we were all kind of watching the videos, but I didn't have my hands on it at that time. And now I'm able to take it for a test drive a little bit in my demo account, and it is so much fun.
Yeah, really, really something that when we talk today about teaching with Chrome and you are leading experiences for a group of students and you've got your Chromebook open and thinking about what it is students are doing on their devices, there's just so many different things that you can do here to make the most of the teaching and learning upgrade. So before we talk about some other topics related to teaching with Chrome, like refining your workflow, like boosting creativity and managing a classroom, I just wanted to give a shout out to a few of them. And of course, there's places you can go for more information to learn all about the things, since we're just kind of scratching the surface. You might already know that with Google Meet, you can have breakout rooms, you can take attendance, you can do that Q&A and polls for a more interactive experience for your learners. Or even if you are using Google Meet to connect with other colleagues, right, in your school community, there's the add-ons where you can integrate ed tech tools. And I'd love to hear in the chat, actually, for these add-ons, have you heard of add-ons? Have you tried any of the add-ons? We're going to talk a little bit about it today because it's a huge part of teaching with Chrome, with the teaching and learning upgrade. So if you have heard of add-ons or you've tried some of these integrations with different ed tech tools, let us know in the chat. I've got some examples to share with you, but would love to just hear where you're at because this is on the newer side of things. And then those originality reports, which you heard Josh mention with the citations, peer-to-peer comparisons, really helping students build digital citizenship skills and understand what it's like to navigate in different online environments. And of course, those practice sets, which are more than just a little new, right? So you can try them out, and they're adaptive, interactive assignments, definitely something worth exploring if you really want to make the most of interacting in these spaces and setting up kids for success with all the things that they need. So if you have questions about any of these pieces too, of course, you can pop them into the chat, but thought I would give them a shout out before we jump into some strategies for really refining your workflow.
Monica, can we do like peer-to-peer comparisons? Because a lot of us know originality reports from comparing it to Turnitin, and
Mhm.
that's what a lot of us would have experience
Yeah.
with, like in undergrad or whatever. But the peer-to-peer comparison thing is a lot of fun to think about. Do you want to talk about that, or you want me to do it?
Yeah, I'll share a little bit, but feel free to add on there too. So when we think about, is this student work original, right? Is it their own thing? We sometimes think about comparing it to maybe something you could Google or find online, right? But peer-to-peer comparisons is really within your own environment to say, right, are 2 or 3 students submitting something that has a similarity that's pretty high, right? Or worth having a conversation about, I think might be, right, the better way to frame it. So anything you want to add on there?
No, that was it. I mean, it's, historically, it's always been like, oh, this student got this paper off the internet. Well, what if one student wrote an original paper, but then another student is submitting the exact same work, but to 2 different teachers? Historically, that would be impossible to catch, but with originality reports, this will say, hey, this very similar document got turned in over here, or in last year's report, or whatever, so you can really do a lot of. And the thing that we talked about last time is it's not necessarily designed to be a gotcha kind of thing, because the student can run his or her an originality report as they are submitting their work. So it's not something that is just for the teacher to see. The student can see it as well, and it
Yeah,
might
I'm so
remind
glad
a
you mentioned
student to cite work or something like that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I do think we sometimes have that association with it being punitive, right? Or the
Right.
gotcha piece, but it really is an opportunity to strengthen student writing skills, to open up conversations about digital citizenship, to think about citations, right? All the things. So, yeah, there's just so much that you can do there with these pieces. So, if you're joining today and you are all in for teaching with Chrome, definitely take a look at some of these upgrades. We're, scratching the surface. I called out a few of them that are high on my list of excitement, but you might have others that are ones you want to take a peek at too. And as we think about refining your workflow today, I thought we could start this conversation by talking a little bit about some of the things that are available for educators teaching with Chrome, where they can see a student experience, they can access what students can experience too, and really understand what a workflow looks like, both from their side of things as well as from the student side of things. And this is where our conversation comes back to the add-ons that I mentioned before. And I don't know if I saw any in the chat, but feel free, if you have even used these tools, whether or not you've used them as an add-on, feel free to let us know in the chat if you've used any of these, because these are ones that are now available for a Google Classroom integration. And I'm even going to pop in a link down here for you in the chat where you can learn a little bit more about these. Since we're talking about it, in the context of a few different things, you might want to dive in a little bit deeper. Yeah, I see some love for Edpuzzle. I know a Kahoot is in my wheelhouse, right? There's a lot of these here, Adobe Express, and which we'll come back to, Nearpod, which we'll mention too. So lots that you can do here. And when we think about refining your workflow, now I don't always choose a word of the year. You know how there's that like one word trend sometimes, but this year I felt really called to choose the word optimize as my one word for 2022. And that's when I think about refining your workflow, is really making the most of all the spaces that you are in, keeping students in spaces where you are able to really make sure that their student experience is really powerful. So this might mean that if you are already using a tool like Nearpod and you are teaching with Chrome, this is a GIF that comes straight from a blog where Nearpod kind of unpacks this for you. So I'm going to drop that link in the chat there in case you want to take a peek at it. And so you can see here that students are inside of Google Classroom. You are able to really refine your workflow by turning on this add-on if you're at that IT level, and then as a teacher inside of a classroom, accessing those add-ons that have been included, right, or opened up for you at your school or district level. So when you want to refine your workflow, add-ons can really help optimize how you are teaching with Chrome. It can keep students in a familiar space. And if you've opened up your Chromebook, you are setting up students for a new activity, right? Keeping them in that familiar place can save time from introducing something new, jumping to another tab where someone might have an issue, right? Or there might be a distraction or something that pops up when we take students out of that familiar place. And I would encourage you to choose one or two tools to really start this routine. I know that I can get very excited when I see new things, but that it tends to work best for me if I choose just a few to try out at once, see if it fits in with my own workflow and routine, and then maybe bring in something else or put something to the side or just make a recommendation to someone else of something I think that's going to work well with them. So if you're teaching with Chrome and you are looking to really refine your workflows, choose one or two of these awesome add-ons to help start this routine. And it's a great opportunity, especially if you have your device open, you are looking to see what that student experience is going to be like. You can communicate those expectations to students to say, this is what it's going to look like now that we're using this new add-on. You're going to notice that just like in the past, especially if you've started the school year 6 weeks or so ago and you've started to build some routines, this is a great way to pivot and communicate either new expectations or ones that parallel to things that students have already done. And so as you are thinking about this piece, you might even, connect it to other routines that you are doing. Like just like when we do this type of exit ticket, now we're going to use this add-on to share, or we love to start off a unit using a Nearpod or Pear Deck lesson. And today we're going to jump into this through Google Classroom. So there's a lot of opportunities to really refine your workflow. I'm a big believer in working smarter, not harder, right? And using our time wisely just in general. And this is a great way to really refine that workflow for both you and your students. And Josh, I don't know if you've got some add-on tips or a favorite add-on or an experience to share there, but would love to hear it before we talk a bit about templates this afternoon.
For me, it's just about keeping the students in a familiar space. I know, in my experience, it doesn't take a whole lot to get students thrown off track. It's like the one day there's a pep rally in the evening and suddenly the kids are bananas. It could just be something that little. And so, if I have an opportunity to bring harmony to that and leverage that creative power of a new app or a new thing, but do it in the environment that doesn't shake the kids loose. It's in a familiar space. It feels natural to them because they're in their Google Classroom where they always are. Then that's an opportunity for me to tap into some of that functionality or the functionality of an application that I might really need for that learning experience, but I don't always want to take the academic risk to go out and do that in a separate place. So it's about bringing harmony, and that's the experience that I've seen in it.
Yeah, and just the idea of really making sure things are smooth flowing right throughout the year, that you are able to have that experience. There we go. That we're able to have that experience where students are in a place that they can navigate, that they know all about, and are able to work within, is just important, right? When we think about making the most of these digital spaces. So in addition to using the add-ons, which are a great way to refine your workflow, this is for everyone, but also for those of you who might not have those add-ons enabled just yet. Another thing to consider is how you might use templates to refine your workflow. I love templates. I use them in all different ways of interacting with students and educators and colleagues. And it's a great way to make sure everyone knows what they need to do and is making the most of their digital spaces. So a template can help establish a structure for a group of students. You might use the same sort of assignment or the same structure for organizing materials inside of Google Classroom. So having that structure so students know where to go to find information. You might make a template like a Google Slides presentation you want to use as an interactive journal for a group of students, or a Google Doc where you've created an outline students are going to use to storyboard a short piece of writing. And you can share that copy with them right from your device, through your drive, through Google Classroom so that students have a copy that is theirs, tagged with their name, easy for you to find, easy for you to give feedback to. And this is a nice way to keep everything within that same ecosystem and to have that copy. And having a cadence for this is great. So it might not be an everyday type of thing, but it may be a regular frequency, right? Or this is what we do at the start of things, in the middle of things, at the end of things, or every Thursday, right? So setting that cadence can also help kids make that connection to this is what we always do when, or no surprises, this is usually how this goes, or this is where I go to look for something. And so a template can provide that structure, but it also can encourage plenty of flexibility. Just like that interactive journal example with Google Slides, you might give students that structure, but they can add another slide, right? They can pull in an image. They can put a link to something that they've created somewhere else. So as much as a template might feel like it sets students up with some constraints, it's also a great way to establish a structure while encouraging some flexibility too. So when we talk today about refining your workflow, using add-ons to keep students within a particular space, setting a routine that really optimizes those, as well as using templates is a great way to think about optimizing your spaces inside of Chrome. So as we think about boosting creativity, before we jump into a spotlight add-on and some pieces, is there anything else, Josh, you want to make sure folks know about refining their workflow while they're teaching in Chrome?
Nothing's coming to mind right now, but the chat is coming alive, and I love to see that. There's some activity over there, but nothing that we need to address right now. So I think we just keep it going, and we might come back to some of these comments in the chat because some of this looks like a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, keep it coming there in the chat, especially if you have a favorite way to refine your workflow. If you
Yeah.
love a screencasting tool, which I'm seeing some of that already pop up, definitely let us know in the chat and we'll come back to that during the Q&A. So when we think about boosting creativity, this can take so many forms. And if you spent time inside of the Chrome ecosystem, you know there are just so many things that you can do. I mentioned those add-ons earlier, and I wanted to spotlight one in particular. I've done some work with the Adobe team, formerly Adobe Spark, now Adobe Express, and I featured them on my blog earlier this week, or yeah, I want to say earlier this week, sometime in September, sometime this month. And I'll put a link out to their website with some more info on there too. And so Adobe Express is one example of a creativity tool that when it is enabled, right, in your system, that you can access and have students create right from within. So you can see here, this screenshot is of an assignment. In addition to attaching other things you might be used to, like that make a copy of a Google Slides or Google Doc, you can use an add-on like this one with Adobe Express. You can either have students start totally from scratch, or you can create or find a template that they can use, which is great for activities where you want to boost creativity with a student project. And you may have time to carve out for a long-term project, or you might do this in one sitting, right? One day, over 2 days, or a week, and you're able to really set kids up with everything they need right from this assignment. Maybe you link out to a rubric, maybe you share a teacher example as an attachment, and you are pushing out this experience right from within this space. So to really boost creativity with student projects, there's a few things you might want to consider or bring into your commitments with teaching with Chrome this year. Starting small is always a place I like to start, even if you're doing this in the middle of the year where you've spent a lot of time with students and you've done different types of creative projects. If you're bringing in a new workflow, like an Adobe Express connection, like a connection transition to a different creative tool, you might want to start small with I sometimes call them low stakes projects. So ones that are not the heavy lift of the content. If you're going to have students create a poster that talks all about different characters from a book that they read, well, you might have them create a poster that's an all about me first, where they talk about themselves, get used to pressing all the buttons, and then you bring in the content next. You can also take these creative experiences, especially the one-day ones, right, that we sometimes don't give as much love and attention to, and encourage sharing to get students excited about working within these spaces. It's also an opportunity to incorporate peer and teacher feedback. So boosting creativity is a great way to set up students so that they have something to talk about with a partner, that they can practice giving feedback with maybe that comment, right, on a Google slide presentation, or maybe face-to-face, turning to the person next to them and layering in those different teacher workflows. You might also decide that you want to thread in digital citizenship skills as well, asking students to search for photos and add that citation in, having them place a different type of resource next to something where they can talk a little bit about where they found it. So there's a lot of ways to boost creativity alongside some of the other goals that you might have. And would love to hear from you in the chat. If you have a favorite creative project, maybe one you've already started for this school year, whether you're 2 weeks in or 1 week in or 6 or 7 weeks in, maybe you've done something that would fall into this creative category already, or if you want to share something you did at the end of last year, right, you can let us know in the chat. So Josh, are there any pieces when it comes to creativity that you want to make sure people know about when they're teaching with Chrome?
I think a lot about like the literacy initiatives that I've been a part of, and it seems like in every good literacy initiative, we have a focus on reading and writing, as we should. And the thing that gets marginalized every time, in my experience, is speaking and listening. And so I love the idea of us creating opportunities for students to give voice to their experiences, for students to practice the art of storytelling, and then the art of listening and being able to express empathy through listening and through compassion. And that's the fun side of creativity, for me. And I think, I don't know how exactly that works with Adobe Spark, but I know that there's been paying a lot of attention to some extensions like the Anchor FM extension and the Soundtrap extension, and some of those types of things to allow students that opportunity for voice, for speaking and listening, in the Chrome environment is really, powerful in my experience.
Yeah, Soundtrap's a great example too,
Yeah.
right? Of one where students can record their voice, they can work collaboratively side by side or far away with someone. And you're so right that, there's a lot of intentional, there's a lot of thought put behind those ELA standards for reading
Right.
and writing. And then sometimes we take it for granted that the speaking and listening is just happening when it's more, right? Well, we're talking about it, right?
Right.
Well, it's a little bit more than that. So what a great way to really recommit to bringing those standards a little more front and center than maybe they are, and more than just on a list of things that we're doing this week, and more of the core value of how
Right.
we are bringing creativity in. Yeah, and I know I said it before, like the low stakes activities are a great way to start. There's still plenty of heavy lifts that come with a creative project. We think
Sure.
about multiple iterations and different types of projects. So the last piece we're going to talk about today is around managing a classroom when teaching with Chrome. And this will lead us into our conversations on questions that you have or things that you want to dive into a little bit more deeply. So when we're thinking about managing a classroom in a Chrome environment, using your Chromebook to see what it looks like, to take students on a learning adventure, right, is something that can really help transform a traditional experience to one that is more interactive, where your message is very clear to students, where you can model explicitly for them so they are able to understand expectations, wrap their head around new concepts, and participate more deeply. So you might decide to do this with a tool like Cast Moderator, where you can really make sure that the clarity of your message, right, is high priority, so that you are modeling for students explicitly. They are able to see things clearly on their own devices as you are sharing with them, and giving them a chance to share their own artifacts of their learning. Maybe it's part of that creative process. Maybe it's a showcase or a celebration, and maybe it connects back to some of those collaborative conversations that you are incorporating alongside, right, that speaking and listening commitment as well. So managing a classroom within these spaces, right, you might see that you want that student view to look a particular way. You want to have an understanding of what students see on their own devices. You might really think through your priorities for reaching every student this year, whether you're deciding to record screencasts. So you are modeling for students, everyone who was present that day, but you know that you have students who would value having a lesson to review or who didn't attend a particular session, and recording screencasts. You might decide that you are using different opportunities to transcribe video calls, so students have a text version that they are able to revisit. You might decide that your goals for reaching every student this year are to use the practice sets that we started talking about earlier, making sure everyone has what they need using the adaptive software built into the practice sets. Or you might decide that as you are using different add-ons, creating assignments for students, exploring different ways for students to interact with content, that you are providing different options for student activities and assignments too. So there's so much that you can do here with these different pieces. I mentioned a few of the options that you might want to consider when teaching with Chrome. I'm going to pop back over here, Josh, to the slide with that shows a little bit of the Cast Moderator in action too, because we'd love to have you share a bit about that piece before we jump into our Q&A together with those who are joining live.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Monica, it's about just, I remember I took my undergraduate classroom management class. I think it was like in 2004-ish or something like that, maybe 2005. And it doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but I can just tell you, like, even that short time, ago, we were not thinking about classroom management as being a one-to-one learning environment. I mean, we were talking about seating charts and bullying, and that was our experience with classroom management. And adding 30 school-owned devices and now another 30 personally owned devices that are in students' pockets, I mean, I can't help but to think that that should have an impact on how we manage our classrooms. And I think a lot of us that are here on the call are probably in a similar boat, that it's not that we're unqualified, it's just that the dynamic of classroom management has changed. The dynamic of our classrooms has changed, and therefore the way we manage those classrooms should adapt along with the pedagogical trends, I would think.
Yeah, and such a great connection to what we think about when it comes to classroom management, or what we prepare for, what the evolving components here are. And I think that's one of the reasons why, I'm really excited about the teaching and learning upgrades, the availability, right, of having something like Cast Moderator to make sure everyone is on the same page, right, and
Right.
understanding what the expectations are, and what it is that they are doing within these spaces. So just so many different components and different things to consider when we talk about making the most, right, of these spaces. So today we looked a bit at refining your workflow, using some of the different components like the add-ons, like templates, boosting creativity, and giving students opportunities for those speaking and listening moments within a classroom, and managing a classroom to make sure that you are making the most of the devices that you have access to, using different features, whether it's creating screencasts, right, or beaming out your screen for everyone to be able to see. There's so much that you can do with teaching in a Chrome environment and with your Chromebook. And I want to make sure that we save some time today to answer any questions that you have.
I don't know if there were some interesting things being shared in the chat that we might go back to. I haven't seen any specific questions, but I will just say, in case there's anyone here from Monica's audience, you may not even know, you're probably like, who is this guy? So in case you're wondering, I'm Josh, I'm with Trafera, and Monica and we've gotten to be buddies long distance, we're pals now. Our paths continually cross and we have opportunities to work together. But if you're not familiar with Trafera, we're an educational technology company. We sell everything that that schools need to make ed tech work, like laptops and desktops and boards and all those kinds of things, printers, and then obviously the stuff that makes it work, like professional development. Our big thing is you can have all the technology in the world, but if you haven't invested in your people, you got a bunch of paperweights. And so the thing that we want to do is make sure that we're empowering people as we're investing in things. We're also investing in people. So that's, and I lead our education initiatives here. So in case you're here from Monica's realm of influence and we haven't yet met, that's who I am, and that's what we're here to do. Yeah, so I don't know, Kate, is there anything that you saw in the chat that you want us to touch on?
Yeah. There was one question. Sharon asks, you talked about a lot of different apps and extension, and she asked if the apps were, I think what she meant to ask was if they're free for use. I think a lot of them are kind of free or freemium models, but maybe you could touch on that.
Yeah, and one thing, and I'm so glad that you shared that with that vocabulary, if you will, because I want to make sure there's a distinction between an extension and the add-on.
Right.
We think about Chrome extensions. I've got extensions on my Chrome browser. You might be able to see some of them here right with my screen share, but this add-on is going to be something a little bit different, and it's built inside of Google Classroom. It's part of the teaching and learning upgrade. Your IT admin. So if I've taught fifth grade for several years. I couldn't do this right inside of my Google Classroom. If I was still teaching fifth grade, I would need the IT admin to turn it on, right? Or to say, yep, this one is approved. It's going to be in our teacher's drop-down menu. So those add-ons connect to different tools, and you may have different functionality of what you can do depending on what your kind of, I guess, level of usage is, right? So like if you are a premium subscriber to X, Y, and Z, then yes, you'd be able to do all the things, but you'd need to have that add-on enabled to make it happen through Google Classroom. Adobe Express is one that's totally free, right? So it wouldn't make a difference, right? If you got the add-on, you can do all the things, but it may make a difference for some of the other tools that have premium features.
Great.
Right.
I'm glad you said that about, needing to have that Google Workspace teaching and learning upgrade, because you can see on the screen, there's a QR code in that navy box. You can get a free trial upgrade for Google Workspace for Education. In case you're looking to try out some of those tools in your own classroom, you can just go ahead and use that QR code and test it out for yourself. Take a little spin, it for a spin.
That's awesome.
And you will want it. That's the thing about the teaching learning upgrade is once you take it for a test drive, you're going to want it.
Yeah, other than that, there weren't many questions. There were a lot of kind of people chiming in with different tools that they like using. Screencastify was one of them. Screen recording with Loom, screen recording with Cami. People were calling out all sorts of stuff that they like to use. So that was really fun.
Yes,
and I don't know if it helps Sharon at all, but I use a lot of those apps that we had up there that Monica was sharing, and I don't pay for any of them except for Nearpod. And I think that you could get into most of those at least at some level without paying. I do pay for Nearpod because I love it, but the others on there, I'm using most of these actually. Look at me go. I didn't realize I was doing all that. Proud of myself.
I know so many. I mean, I don't even know where to start on my list of shout outs right here. So a lot of them. And yeah, and and some of you mentioned the screencasting piece before too, like that's all part of refining your workflow, right? So you might make a video, you might post it or share it right in a materials area so that you can watch it. You might add it to an assignment. So just like templates are great. Like if you have taught something before and you know what kind of questions you typically get, or your group of students and you know what kind of things they might need to, just take another look at. It's a great way to make the most of your time and have things that are ready to go to answer student questions at any time of day.
Awesome. Kate, anything else? I think that's it.
I don't think so. Yeah, if you are interested, we also have another QR code that you can scan. We're running a promotion for Chromebooks for teachers. So if that's something, if you've never worked in kind of a Chromebook environment as a teacher and you're kind of looking to transfer your teaching experience over to a new OS, we have a new promotion that we're running right now, and you can just check out the details with that QR code. Other than that, there's nothing for me. I'm going to launch the exit survey now. If you want to get your coffee, make sure you take that. It's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, if you didn't register with a school work email address, that's, an EDU email address or a .k12.net email address. If you didn't register with that, please make sure that you send that to me. My email address is down in that left corner. I can make sure that you get on the list for coffee gift cards. I know we all want that. It's pumpkin spice latte season.
It is here. Yeah.
It's here. We made it.
And thank you, Monica, for doing this with us. It's always such a good time. You bring such a well-rounded approach, and I love it.
Well, thank you all for the invitation to come and share. I am very excited about all the things. And I don't think I dropped a link in there, but if you search back on my Easy Ed Tech podcast, you can find the conversation Josh and I had earlier this year. We look at things from a couple of different perspectives. And so it might be a nice complement to the conversation that we had today.
Man.
Well, we'll stick around a little bit longer so people have a chance to finish that exit survey. But thanks again, Monica. Thank you, Josh. Thank you for everyone for turning out today. If you haven't, again, if you came from Monica's side and you're meeting Trafera for the first time, it's great to meet you guys. Thank you so much for being here. And if you're coming from the Trafera side and this is your first time meeting Monica, you'll be seeing more from her because we love working with her. She's great.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.